Hi, and welcome to this next episode of Coach Danalytics, preparing you for the game of life. I'm your host, Dan Williamson, coming to you today to talk about how to make anything great. Throughout my career, I've always been a person that starts with situations where other people might not take the job. Other people might look at the company as too much work. I'm really great at taking bad situations and making them better, taking failing companies and make them turn a profit, making anything great. And, you know, if you can do that, you become so valuable as an employee, as a businessman, as a leader, businesswoman, and as a leader. You become someone that is very hireable. You become someone that people look to make things great. So it's a gift. I'm here today to, share this with you and get you going and get you on a great path. All right. So let's begin. We're talking about, what to do anytime you take over a failing business, a failing program, how to make anything great. The first thing you have to do, you have to look at the situation clearly and make sure that it's something that you want to get yourself invested into. Right? You have to make sure, you have to find out what is broken in the situation. Okay. The first thing you want to do is make sure that it's fixable and make sure that it's worth fixing. I have occasionally run into situations where I've been like, I don't really want any piece of that. That thing is so far gone. It would take a lot more than just one person to do this. But assuming you see potential there, assuming that you see something that you could put your name on, let's talk about, how to figure out what's broken. Well, usually with business and programs, the first thing it starts with is training. Now, I have a bachelor's degree in adult education and training, and that led to a lot of jobs as a business consultant where I would go in and specifically at that period of my life, I would just basically talk about systems, okay? I would talk about training, knowing that, if you believe statistics that are out there today, it says that 93% of people are completely incompetent in their job, and that's a staggering factor. So that led to a lot of easy success. If 93% of people can't even do the basic functions of their job in America today, if I just came in as the training manager and give them better training on exactly how to do their job, whether it's, data entry or billing or whatever it may be, if I just look at their training program and make that better, a lot of times I could charge people a lot of money and I could raise productivity immediately just by basically telling them what they should be doing. And then I would look at their training and find ways to be more efficient, ways to do more things at once, ways to multitask, and ways to basically get their employees more productive. So a lot of times it starts with any company or program. Same things with athletics. Are you training properly? Are you going over the fundamentals of each sport? Do you have systems in place to help people get better, right? If you want to be a great leader and you want to be a person that makes businesses or programs better, you have to be great at developing people. Right? You have to be great at meeting people where they are, right? If employee on a scale of 1 to 10 is at a 1, you got to be really good at taking a 1 to a 3, at least getting some base level production. If the employee's at an 8, you got to be able to take that 8 and get them to a 10, right? So that's the biggest trick that you can do with people. So I took what I learned about training and, I was able to apply that immediately. And then obviously, I'm a big person into leadership. So I was like, once I'm teaching some competency and got some skills going, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attack energy and I'm going to attack culture. I'm going to attack, how to get them thinking right, how to get them combined on something together. And that's how I've been able to a lot of times take programs and take things to the next level with people. The most important thing, and then sometimes it's a leadership issue, and then I got really good at working and got possessed with leadership from my time in the military, all the leadership academies and all the speeches and things that I went to. I became really good at working with the leaders of company to create a culture and have them practice what they preach and bleed that culture into other people, right? So that's really the most important thing. You start with what's broken. Is it the training? Are people not being developed? Have people been working there 10 years? Have people been playing in that program 2 or 3 years and not gotten any better? If so, how do I fix that, right? And that always came a little bit natural. So after that, you take a look and you say, okay, culture a lot of times is broken, right? And when your culture's not good, you can't do anything well. All right, so culture is the most important thing. I say this in athletics all the time, and I really believe that. I'm a basketball coach for 22 years, won 2 state championships, have close to 100 kids, went on and played college basketball that played for me. Not many people have done that, have had a similar career path in terms of coaching high school basketball, high school baseball as I am. Very blessed to have that amount of success. But I will say this, culture is everything. It trumps talent. It trumps height. It trumps speed. Culture is absolutely everything. And being able to build a culture starts with being able to define the culture. What is it exactly that you're trying to do? What is it that you're absolutely trying to get people to believe in, buy into, and follow, right? And most people will follow you as the leader for some very simple reasons. Fear of missing out, right? People don't want to miss out on the next best thing. I use that with EXP all the time. I believe if a realtor's not with EXP 99% of the time, they're missing out on what's probably the greatest opportunity to build generational wealth that they're ever going to see in their lifetime. That fear of missing out gets a lot of people to sit down with me and talk about joining EXP with me. Fear of missing out where the company's going, where the program is coming. I remember when I first took over at Dunn Academy with basketball, I said, one day we're going to have an incredible basketball program if you just stick with me, do the things I ask you to do. And we did get there. But in the beginning, when there wasn't much to sell and we were improving facilities, we had to create an idea that the kids didn't want to miss out on where we were going. And that was able to get a lot of buy-in right away. People want to be a part of something bigger. All right, so if you align your goals to do something for the greater good, for the greater world, for the greater community, for any common cause, that nothing rallies people together like a common cause. You see it in the military a lot of times. People are willing to move forward and die because they're part of something bigger than themselves. I mean, that's a crazy example, a little bit of an extreme example, but that is true. People want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And the next thing is people want to follow somebody. If you're the leader and you've been hired to take over this company, this program, people want to follow somebody that has something to give them, right? Nobody wants to follow a leader that ain't got nothing, right? My favorite quote in life is by William Penn, and it says, "No man is fit to lead that can't lead himself," right? So, my God, if people are going to follow you, you better be worth following. Right? If kids are going to look up to you in sports, you better darn well be worth looking up to, right? So you got to have your own house in order. You got to have something to give them, right? And throughout all the businesses and the companies that I've taken over, the programs I've helped succeed, started a college basketball program from scratch with no money, had us nationally ranked within 2 years. There's always an undying belief, but there's always that I have something to give them. All right. I'm confident in what I'm trying to do. I know how to develop people. I know how to take people to the next level. If you don't have something to give them, they're not going to follow you. So you've got to be confident in what you're teaching. You got to know what you're teaching works. One thing I really subscribe to, and I think every young leader out there, or old leader out there, should subscribe to something I call the gung-ho theory of leadership. It comes from a book that I read in the military, and I really took it on, helped me win the leadership awards throughout the military. I won the Combat Leadership Award at 7-level school, which is one of the highest honors a cop can get in the military. But basically, my philosophy of leadership is very simple. Everyone's job is valuable, and I really believe that. If I'm coaching a sport, I make every single young person believe that their job is the most important on the team, because it is. In basketball, without a point guard passing you the ball, you can't get the ball up the floor, you can't win. If you don't have big guys inside that are willing to bang and rebound and grab the ball, you're going to give up too many possessions, you're going to lose. If you don't have anybody that can shoot that thing, you're going to lose too. So even the kids that are coming off the bench, without a good bench, without a kid coming in hitting shots off the bench, without a spark plug, we won't have a way to change the energy game. The idea is to have every single person feel like their job is important. You ever work somewhere or do something where you didn't feel like it was important? Pretty hard to get motivated, right? Pretty hard to be the best version of yourself. Pretty hard to take a family company and make it better if the people feel like their job isn't important, right? Because they're not the owner. Right? They get a paycheck, same every week. How are you going to get those people to go all in? How are you going to take that employee that's on a 2 on a scale of 10? How are you going to get them to a 4? If they think their job's not valuable. So some of the trick is the magic of letting them know how important things are. And I remember some of my first months at Dunn Academy when I took over. I stepped in as Dean of Student Life and had a great run there with a legendary leader, John McGee, followed by 2 other wonderful headmasters I got to work with there. But at the time, we were struggling with some things, and I made it a point to try to make everyone feel like their piece was the most important piece. And that magic was created as we added people to the bus. We're going to talk to that later. But, we had a music teacher there, Adrian Mazar, retired from Florence, just incredible. And she believes that music department is the best thing going at that school. And she's incredible. There's an energy to her, craziness to her. She's top notch. Now we had a science teacher who was working on the oil fields, retired from the oil fields, came in and taught STEAM, and he was doing pumpkin launching and building robots and putting cardboard boats in the water and having the kids race them. I mean, he really believed that science and math, like that was his baby, and he, that was the most important part of the school. And here I was believing athletics and culture, and I tell the kids I loved them every day. I tell them, aren't you thankful to be here? That created an energy of thankfulness. And I believed athletics was the front door of the school, and that if we didn't have a good athletic department, people would make judgments about our school, and they do, and they would. Right? We built that athletic department, giving kids a great experience. And it just goes on and on and on and on from there. So many great people attached to the school, right down to the lady we have answering the phones. I mean, it was just an incredible energy. Admissions has to feel like if they're not bringing in the great kids, you can't have a great school. Every single person in a company or a business has to feel like their job is important to get to where you want to be. When every person feels that way, they feel intrinsic rewards. And intrinsic rewards is how you keep your people moving forward. Money is not a great motivator. Money only gets people motivated for so long. You ever get a raise, you go to work, you think, man, I'm going all in, I'm going to be the best supervisor ever. 3 weeks in, you're like, this stinks. All right. The truth is intrinsic rewards is the way to really win over people. Get them feeling like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. Get them feeling like they're all in. So make them feel like their job is valuable. Part of and we talk a lot about our, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we want to feel valued for being a professional. And I think we did that really good at Dunn Academy. I think I've done that really good in the military. I tell every one of the guys in my squad or in my unit how important their job was. And I think that made people want to work for me and want to go the extra mile. I think people do need a role. I think part of that is creating a role for everyone. We have kids, not everybody can be a star player on any sports team. Some kids have to sit the bench. They're not ready yet. But give them some kind of role if they're willing to accept it. Keep them feeling a part of it. Same thing at work. Everybody in your job has to have a role, something that builds their self-esteem, something that is their baby, right? It could be something simple as we put one person in charge of the snack bar. It was their job to keep the fridge stacked, make money, and then we'd take that money and throw huge events. And that person became one of the best employees we've ever had. They were really struggling motivation. A young person that just really didn't have any desire to come to work, come on time. We put them in charge of that snack bar. Oh my God, we created a monster. You should have seen the change in that person immediately. That became their baby. Going down to the Columbus market to get fresh apples and bananas and fruits for the snack bar. And it created more of a pride in them. And then their job performance outside of the snack bar at lunch started to go up through the roof because they had something that made them feel appreciated. They felt like their job was important. People liked them, talked to them. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Give your assistant coaches a role. One of my best, friends in life coaches basketball with me at Dunn Academy. I gave him the man-to-man defense. I was like, this is your baby. Be the best man-to-man coach you've ever seen. That kid took that. He gets better every single day. He gets better every single year. Has become one of the best man-to-man coaches, that I've ever been around, right? Give people roles. One coach is in charge of inbound plays and press breaks. Give people a role in your company and watch them succeed. I think that's something we do at the Colony very well. Is this person's in charge of the investor group. This person might be, in charge of the rental division. But give people a role to make them feel like they're part of the greater good. And the biggest thing that you can do is tell people that you love them, right? Tell people that you care. Tell them thank you. Man, when my boss tells me thank you, even to this day, man, I feel really good. I feel really good when I come home from work and my wife says, thank you for everything you're doing for our family. I appreciate how hard you work. You think I'm not going to go back to work tomorrow and be a savage? Just that little pat on my back or rub on the shoulder when I walk in after a 16-hour day and she says, thank you for all you're doing for our family. You think that doesn't motivate me? I'm the most motivated person of all time, but just that little thank you to know that she appreciates it and that my kids appreciate it, that just keeps me being a savage for life, a savage for success every day. So telling people thank you and having them feel appreciated, you think it's a little thing, but it's the most important thing. I've seen companies where people make a ton less than the average, but they're willing to stay forever because they feel like their job is important. They feel appreciated from their boss and they have something that's theirs. And they felt like if they left it, it would not run as good as when they were there, right? So there's a really good trick. It's called the gung-ho theory of leadership and understanding motivation. I took over a company once They hired me. Back then it was big money, but they gave me $2,500 for the week. And, it's one of my first consulting jobs. And their problem is they had a day shift and a night shift. It was a production company, a manufacturing company. And they had these lines where they would, produce. Day shift was outproducing night shift 4-1. So they come in, they wanted to hire me to run night shift. I said, nah, I can't do that. I'm out of the military. I got my own business, my own life. I was a college professor at the time, coaching. But I said, I'll take the consulting gig. I'll take a look and I'll tell you what I could do. I thought it was probably a training problem. It was a motivation problem, right? So night shift would come in, and like I said, day shift was outproducing them like 4 times the amount of product. So I came in the first day and I just took a look around. I had to figure out what was broken. This is a great success story, by the way. But I took a look around. I saw workers that were only motivated to really smoke. The smoke break was like a big thing. They got like a 20-minute smoke break like every 2 hours. You threaten to take that away, it had a reverse effect. People started working less. It caused like a resentment towards the management. So you're getting very low production. Everybody looked flat. Everybody looked, honestly, a little lazy. There wasn't a great energy for the night shift. Night shift can be a little tough anyway on your body. But one thing I did notice, about a block and a half down the street was a little convenience store. A little knockoff 7-Eleven. I forget the name of it, but it wasn't a 7-Eleven, but it was like a makeshift 7-Eleven. A lot of the employees were from different countries. And I noticed that they would go there and they would come back with cigarettes, and they would come back with a phone card. And sometimes there was, payphones back then, a long time ago. There's payphones outside the store. I would see a lot of them would hop on the payphones and make calls in between breaks. So I stopped, talked to a couple of them, got something to eat, sat down, talked to a couple on the sidewalk, and found out that, for a lot of them, they had left their families behind and were working here in this company because they could make money and send it back to their families in their different countries. And that the only way they really got to talk to these people, because they didn't have phones, the cell phones hadn't really picked up at that time. But what they had done is these phone cards were their only way to communicate back home. I said to myself, I just got my in. So the next night, I get about an hour early, and I walk into that convenience store, and I throw $200 down on the table. I get $200 of those phone cards because that was the motivation. They didn't care about anything else except being able to call back home. And being in the military and being away from home before, I remember that pain of not being able to talk to people whenever you wanted to. Right. So I walk into business. The night shift was like 4 to midnight. And I walk in, it's like 3:45. I stand up in front of everyone. I jump up on one of the cultivator belts, and I have the phone cards in my hand. I say, listen, whichever line, there was 4 lines. I was like, whichever line produces the most in this shift from 4 to 12, I've got $200 worth of phone cards for all of you. You can split them. There's 4 or 5 people on each line, right? But $200 worth of phone cards goes a long way. Wouldn't you know, it was the most productive night in the company's history. And by the time I did that every night, I was there for 2 weeks. By the end of that 2 weeks, night shift was crushing day shift. Now, what did that do for me? I look like a genius. I mean, I could have probably asked those guys, and I like the one guy. I don't talk to him much anymore, but had a little golfing incident, but very competitive. But I don't let anybody win. But by the time of that end of 2 weeks, they were ready. They would have wrote any amount of money had I said I wanted to be the CEO, or if I just want to be in charge of night shift, they would have wrote a check any amount of money to keep me there. It was dark. There wasn't windows. I was like, I'm not doing this. But anyway, that's a prime example of understanding how to motivate people and how to keep people going. For that company, it was a simple phone card. I don't know how anybody, supervisor, could have worked there that long and not realized, how to motivate, but I was happy to help there. But that's a prime example. The next thing I will tell you, and I shared this with my baseball team the other day, is we struggle in a couple positions, and you got to be unapologetically all in for each other and for your people, right? Because there's employees that you have, that's who you got. You could make changes if you want to, but for right then or that situation, for most times when you're taking over a company, who you inherit is who you have, right? So you got to be unapologetically all in for each other. Love your people, man. Have a picnic, have a barbecue, have an awards night. Try to put together a discount cruise. Take them to Atlantic City. You can get rooms for $40, $50, if you do a group package. Find ways to keep your people engaged. Be unapologetically all in for their wives, their lives, their kids. Find out what's going on with their husbands, their grandparents. When something's wrong, be there. Be unapologetically all in as the leader and watch how fast your culture grows. Right? If I've done nothing right, I'm unapologetically all in for anybody that's a part of my life. I'm all in for my realtors. I'm all in for any kid that I coach. I mean, I love these kids for life, right? And somebody taught that to me. I had a baseball coach growing up. He still texts me every day. Love you. Be amazing. God didn't create you to be small. This guy, I'm almost 50 years old. He texts me every day. His name's Donald Porter, great guy back in Harrington there. But one of the great leaders in my life, still to this day, is still coaching me. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to be a life coach. I want to be a part of these people's lives for the rest of their life, sharing my gift of energy to them. And that's the best thing you do. Bring a daily energy, a daily love for your people, and establish the culture you want and know where you're going. Having a mission, having a common cause really does help that as you're doing it. Now, after you initially take over, you've set your culture, you've seen motivation, you make your initial changes, it's time to start looking at what you need to do in terms of personnel. Getting the right people on the bus is so important. People make a lot of mistakes when hiring. Hiring is one of the most difficult things as possible. I've seen a lot. I've seen people that hired based off of just degrees only. One company in particular that I studied for a long time, they did a shift in culture and they went after the most fanciest degreed people they could find. I've never seen a company decline faster in my life than that company, right? They based everything off the shiny degree. I'm not saying education is not important, because it is, but you can't hire only on that factor. What you're really looking for is the right people, and you've got to define what makes the right people, right? For us, share the story before, hired a guy to teach math off an oil rig, turned out to be the best math teacher I've ever seen. Right? We hired a guy, graduated from Penn, brilliant guy, left the corporate world. We hired him in August. He was a monster for English. One of the best human beings I've ever been around, ended up being the head of upper school. So, sometimes it's hard to hire, but you got to get the right people on the bus. Look for who they are as a person. That would be my greatest advice to you when hiring. Look at their soul. Care less about their degree. Sure, you want to have some experience, but 99% of success is drive and motivation, right? Look at someone's soul. Get to know them in the interview. Ask personal questions that won't get you in trouble, with the government, you know what I mean? But try to do background. Look at their Facebook. Look at their social media. Look what kind of human being you're bringing into your company, right? Get the right people on the bus, people that you think can join a common cause. Me personally, I like ex-military. I'm not going to lie to you, because they know what it's like to be all in. They know what it's like to sacrifice. They're usually not selfish. I like ex-school teachers for the same thing. I love ex-athletes, right? The majority of the people that work for me at EXP that are unbelievable salespeople have those things in common, right? So knowing what you're looking for and getting the right people on the bus is so important. If you look at the energy bus, one of my favorite books by John Gordon, it talks about the energy that's on the bus every day. If you're surrounded by good people that believe in what you're doing, that believe they're attached to something bigger than themselves, that bus is going to get to where it's going. It's going to get to its destination. It's going to go smooth. Now you get the right people off the bus. That's the next step, because they're putting something in that gas tank every day. They're either putting good gas, premium, or they're putting that terrible gas with water in it that you see on the side of the roads out there. Like, there's one gas station I drive by every day. I'm like, there's water in that tank. No doubt in my mind. It's like, 20 cents less. But you don't want people that are putting bad gas in the tank. And too many times we make excuses for people and we say, oh, well, they do a good job. I don't care if they're the best employee you have. If they're terrible and they're negative, they're against you and they're against the mission, get them off the bus. Right? One of the biggest mistakes I've seen in business, biggest mistake I've made in my personal lives is when I let the wrong people stay on the bus too long. Now, if you're not in charge, it's hard to get them off the bus. But remember, if you're talking about taking over the program, you're probably going to be the boss. Get the people that you know shouldn't be on that bus. Get them off. Don't make excuses for them. Try to help them. Try to love them. But when they show you who they really are, believe them. Believe them, right? Too many times we one terrible teacher can ruin a school. One terrible parent can ruin a sports program. One terrible employee can just kill the culture of a team. And you like to think that your culture's stronger than that, right? But I've seen it happen where even the best businesses, where the best programs, you get a big enough personality in there, they can find people to run with, because negativity breeds like cancer. You get one negative person, you can find negativity in anywhere. what I've always been able to do is I've been able to create my dream job wherever I sat. Wherever position I was in, I was able to make it the best it could possibly be. And I look to celebrate the goodness in that position. And I think that's a great way to live life. But getting the right people off the bus is just as important as getting the right people on the bus. You cannot be afraid to let people go. When they start to feel heavy, let them down, drop them. You'll be a lot better off. Confidence in what you're doing. You can't waver. I can't tell you how many people have tried to get me to join their company away from EXP. You know what I mean? And I can't tell you how many of those people came back and joined EXP with me later because I never wavered. I know what I'm doing is great. I know what we're doing for people is wonderful. I know the opportunities that EXP provides, right? Other people are not as solid in their core beliefs about what they're doing. So no matter how many people have tried to talk to me about joining this brokerage or that brokerage or branching off this, I've stayed consistent and confident. I know what I'm doing is sent from God. I know, the model that I created where I'm not taking anything from my realtors at all is not normal. It's different. And I know that's the right thing to do. I know in my heart that's God's will for my life is I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to change lives, provide, financial freedom to realtors in a way they never dreamed of. And that scares people and that creates some enemies. I got some of these bigger brokerages, they'd like to run me over with a bus if they could, because they know if their people see what I'm doing, they're not, nobody in their right mind is going to stay with them. But again, you have to be steadfast and confident in what you're doing. And you have to have systems in place that work and make people great. In any business, your training program, your systems, you have to be calm. You have to know your business, right? In real estate, we starts with a motivational text in the morning. We do a business plan with each realtor. We follow up with detailed plans of what to do every single day. We call it our daily habits of success, how to get in front of 50 to 100 people a day. We know if they follow these systems, they're going to make $100,000 a year almost without trying. Then it's up to us to find the motivation to get them up and get them to keep following that, even on the days when it's raining and the days when it's hard. That's one thing that I do very well. You got to have the systems in place to make people better, because you're always looking to develop your people, all right? Always looking to develop your people. If they're at a 2, get them to a 4. Once they're at a 4, try to get them to a 5. You're always trying to move everything forward. It's the same thing in sports. We have a system of basketball we believe in Dunn Academy, and we train around that system, and we watch our guys continually to get better every year. We've had young people that have come through our program that never got any better, but very, very rarely. The majority of kids that come through our programs in baseball or basketball, you see an unbelievable progression, right? Because we know what we're doing. We know what it takes to develop. We don't waste time on moves that you would never do in a real game. We focus on the way that we play basketball and those skills so it transitions to the court. And we believe in turning you over. We believe in winning the rebound battle. We believe in winning the 3-point contest and the free throw battles. Most points per possession. So if we're not shooting the 3-pointer, we're going to the rim and getting an and one. And we really believe in that. And it's the way we coach defense. We're going to win the turnover battle. We're going to win that rebounder battle. We're going to end up with 40 or 50 more shots a night than you are. And that's how we've been able to build such an incredible program in such a small school. But we know our development is great. There's nobody developing talent like we do at Dunn Academy for basketball and baseball. Nobody does it. You see these bigger schools, everybody wants to, pat them on the back and write articles in the newspaper about them, but that's not impressive. Anybody can scholarship a bunch of kids, 20-year-old guys, change their birth certificate, put them out there. I mean, we got one team won a state championship in basketball. Not a single kid lives in the town. Everybody knows they're cheating. Nobody cares. One kid's 22 years old. I mean, we had a kid leave Doane as a junior, was still playing basketball up until last year. I mean, this kid has to be 30. But anyway, high school sports is corrupt. We know that. It's corrupt all the way up through college. But my point is, be great at developing people. That's what we do better. We take the kids that want to come because they want a great education and they want to play basketball at our school, and we make them as good as they can possibly be. And that creates a culture where the kids are all in there fighting with everything they have, and we're very proud of what we do. That's what you have to have in any business to make things better. Systems in place that truly work to make people great. All right. That's what you have to have to take anything over. The hardest thing is, once you built it, staying on top is the hardest, right? Because nobody's against you when you're failing. Once you start winning, things can be tough. Then, the accusations and people start, why does everybody love this person? Are they really that good of a leader? Maybe they just got lucky. I remember we had 17 straight winning seasons. People be like, oh, is he really that good of a coach? And I just be like, maybe I'm not. You know what I mean? Just let it go. But don't pay any attention to the outside noise. But know that once you start having success, right, the people that really truly love you, they're going to be there with you at the top. But a lot of people may trickle off because your success and your energy might make them start to feel inadequate about themselves, right? But never waver about who you are, and what you are about. For me, it consistently comes back to my faith in God, my family, and I stay grounded, right? I stay the same person. I'm the same person, that I've always been. I just want to help people. I want to change lives. I want my life to mean something. I'm looking for intrinsic rewards. Sometimes I have great years and make a decent income, right? But at the end of the day, that's not what gets me out of bed. It's not what gets me out of bed. I wouldn't be giving everything back to my realtors and not taking anything from them if I was greedy. I'm not a greedy guy. I like money as much as the next guy, but what really gets me going in life is helping people, changing lives, setting people free. We have 7 people that work for us out of 130 realtors now that have completely set themselves free, completely financially. They never have to sell another house for the rest of their life if they don't want to. And that gives my life a lot of meaning. But know that the more success you get, the thicker skin you have to have, right? And that's just natural. But again, you've got to stay grounded. You can't get up there in the clouds. I see this in leadership a lot. You have some success and you lose who you are a little bit. You've got to stay grounded every day about your mission. Who am I? What am I about? For me, it's really simple. Again, it's that faith. It's that family. I stay grounded. It's about teaching people how to go all in a world where nobody goes all in anymore. Like, that's my biggest thing is if you teach people how to really work hard for what they want, you teach them to be all in, then you've developed somebody into an unbelievable leader, right? Because half the battle today is showing up with a good attitude. You're going to beat 95% of people if you just show up with a good attitude, right? Imagine if you're all in on top of it. That's how I try to create unbelievable leaders. Always stay positive. Everything is always going great. It's a mindset, right? Stay positive always. I choose their attitude for them. I walk up to that baseball field every day. We're having a great season in baseball at Dunn Academy. Very proud of what we're doing. I walk up to that baseball pro, have success like we've never had before in baseball. I woke up and I tag their hands every day. I make them be positive. There ain't no bad days. I had a bad math test. My girlfriend's fault. We don't allow it. I tag their hands. I walk right up and I just say, hey, man, what a great day to be here. What a beautiful day for baseball. Even if it's cold out, I'm like, I choose their attitude for them. A lot of times as a leader, you could do that. But anybody asks how your day is, you say, great. I'm great, right? You don't burden them with what's going on with you from the leader's perspective. That's why you're the leader, right? You continually tell people things are great. Things end up going great, right? You tell people, I don't know if this company's going to make it. Well, you're creating doubt. You're creating negativity, and you can't be that way. But today, my whole focus was to share with you how to make things great. I hope that I did that. You step into any situation, you address what needs to change. You look at what training programs are in place. You look at what motivation is in place. You look at what mind shifts you can do and what you can do as a leader to create an unbelievable culture, right? I hope this has helped you in some way. And I hope that you can take what you've learned and go on and be a person that can take over programs, that can take over businesses and truly see them be successful. If you can do that, your value in the business world is going to be through the charts. Now, I like to close every episode now with what I call Coach Dan Corner. And it's where I take some advice people send to me asking for advice. And I share that because I think a lot of times I try to pick things that I think a lot of people are going through. And I think I'm pretty good at giving advice. I've lived a lot of lives. I feel like I've lived 20 lives, but I'm all here to share what I've learned as a real estate coach, as a life coach, as a sports coach. I want to share what I've learned about life and pass it on to people. And that's what I'm there for. You can always reach me, Daniel Williamson 605 at yahoo.com or my YouTube. Give your boy a like and a subscribe at Dan Williamson 3797. We'll post all that, on the episode. But this was particularly troubling. Young man had reached out to me. And he said, I am really struggling in life. I've made a lot of bad decisions. I got into drugs and alcohol. I'm not living up to my potential. I had good parents. I had a good life. I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep making terrible choices. I started breaking into homes for the money. I'm off the drugs now, but I'm facing charges. I'm on the run a little bit. And I'm trying to decide, do I want to stay on the run? Do I want to turn myself in? What is the answer? I feel like I have no future. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm at. I'm reaching out to you because I listened to one of your podcasts. So that was tough. But my best advice is this. If you're in a situation that feels hopeless, you've got to create some hope. And my advice to this young man that I sent back into a very long text was to turn themselves in. That living on the run forever, there's no future in that. Always having to look over your shoulder. It starts with changing and taking accountability. The first thing you do to turn a bad situation, a mess that you created personally, is to start making better decisions. Take accountability. Start making better decisions. They said, well, I'm already been to jail once. I'm a convicted felon. I can't get a job. I feel like I just have no hope. I said, well, listen, you've been to jail once. You can get through it again. You go back, you serve your time, you face the judge, you face consequence of your actions, make whatever deal you can make, serve your time. And while you're in, focus on making better decisions, self-help, maybe get some professional help, find out why you make such bad decisions, take accountability, and try to learn a trade. Because if no one's going to hire you because of the decisions you made, the best thing you do is work for yourself. Get good with something with your hands. Be a landscaper, be a welder, be a carpenter. Get a little contractor's license. Start your own business. Start making better decisions. Start standing for something. Come up with a core moral ground. This is who I am. This is who I want to be. And work towards that every day. God has a plan for all of us. You're never done until you're done, right? You're never done until you're done. Doesn't matter if you're 80. Doesn't matter if you're 20. Doesn't matter if you're 10, right? Make better decisions. Have a plan for yourself and have some faith in God that he can see you through anything, right? That's my best advice to this young person. Face up to what you did. Face your consequences. Find some kind of a skill. Get out. Start making better decisions and build a life based on goodness. Family. Find someone great to share your life with. Have a few kids. You've got a whole life. First 26, 27. You got a whole life ahead of yourself. Nothing is over yet. You screwed it up. You sure did. But we have all been there. We've all made mistakes, myself included. It's how quickly can you rebound from the mistakes. Again, I'm Coach Dan Williamson. This is my podcast, Danalytics, preparing you for the game of life. I love you. I hope this podcast helps you. That's why we're doing it. If you like it, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next week. I got some great topics coming up, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.